I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you please rise and we'll pledge the pledge. Marty, you want to
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody would remain standing. Moment of silence for our dear beloved men and women that protect our nation, whether it be overseas, local, East Ocean, wherever. God bless them and their families and let them continue what they're doing. Thank you.
We are going to hold public comment on non-agenda items to be held after the meeting is being recorded. And we're holding public comment till after the conditional use hearing. Brian, do you want to get started?
All right, let's get started here, huh? All right, we are continuing a previously recessed conditional use hearing based on an application dated March 29th, 2019 before the East Goshen Township Board of Supervisors. Just to remind everyone, tonight's proceedings involve a conditional use hearing on an application of Christopher Zampano of CZ Woodworking LLC. As a reminder, the subject property's address is 1422 Ardley Circle, tax parcel ID 53-4-107, located in the township's R2 residential zoning district. As most of us are aware, the applicant seeks conditional use approval from the board to operate a woodworking business as a home occupation. The first hearing in which testimony and evidence was presented occurred before this very board on July 9th, 2019, and was continued to this evening. As was the case on July 9th, if this matter does not conclude by 9:30 p.m., the board will pick a subsequent date and continue the hearing on the record. Some of you may recall that Supervisor Carmen Batavio was not present on July 9th, 2019, but will nonetheless be participating in these proceedings. Last time I asked if there was any objection from any parties to Mr. Batavio's participation, and there were no objections. The hearing transcript from July 9th is readily available, and Supervisor Batavio will have an opportunity, if he has not already done so, to read that transcript from cover to cover. As I did the first time around, I will ask if anyone is interested in party status that is not already a party or represented by counsel. Is there anyone that wishes to seek party status at this time? Hearing none, we will move on. As a reminder, at the close of the evidentiary portion, whether it be tonight or at a subsequent hearing, the board may elect to render its decision or take up to 45 days to render such a decision pursuant to the MPC. I would like to now introduce one new board exhibit, namely Exhibit B9, which I've handed to the parties. B9 is simply a letter from myself dated July 10th, 2019 to the parties, indicating that the matter would be continued this evening, 7 p.m. Last time we were here, we heard from one expert witness, and Mr. Thompson, on behalf of the applicant, was presenting his second witness, the applicant, Christopher Zampano. So at this time, I'd ask that we pick up where we left off and start by asking Mr. Thompson if he has any additional questions for his second witness.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Mark Thompson again on behalf of the applicant.
I have one person.
Hello. Okay.
Again, thank you, board members, Mark Thompson on behalf of the Zampanos and the application. We tried to finish up the testimony of Chris Zampano last time. I just have 2 more questions for him. So I think Mr. Zampano's under oath. I don't know where you would like him. Is it okay if he sits at this table and answers questions?
Since it's being recorded, as long as he has the microphone.
And Mr. Zampano, as your attorney had indicated, just a reminder that you are under oath.
Correct, thank you. Mr. Zampano, we identified one exhibit at the last hearing. It was identified as A16 concerning the materials that you use to finish the wood products that you are proposing to make as part of your business. You have A16?
Yes, I believe so.
Do the board members have A16? I wasn't sure if you had.
You're going to need to talk very clearly and loud, or you will have to get up. I can't hear you, so I know the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both of you need to use a
Okay.
microphone. because it's
Is this
being
okay
recorded.
here?
You are fine, but when your attorney asks questions, he needs one too.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
And it has to be close to your mouth because you're not facing the thing on the bottom. So you need to.
And no duos, this is not Korea.
Is this okay?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
You have A16 in front of you, Mr. Zampano?
I did.
What are the products that are described in A16?
The first product was the Rubio Monocoat, which is a one-coat application system. It's the primary finish that I use on most of the projects I do take on. If they're not being painted, painted would be different, but the natural woodworking pieces that are finished, the Rubio Monocoat is the primary finish I do use.
And where do you buy that?
You can buy it primarily online. I get mine from Amazon, so that's where I order my material from directly.
And do you buy it by the gallon?
No, it comes in very small containers, either in pints or quarts or liters.
Is it similar to what a home woodworker would purchase as far as quantity goes?
I believe so. I guess it depends on the size of the project, but yes.
And the other product that's on the 3rd page of the exhibit, that's, it says Poly-X oil. What is that?
Yes, Poly-X oil is a hard wax oil. It's if you're just doing a natural finish on a table where you don't want to add pigment or color, and it's just a very easy, simple brush-on application. So it's another product that I do use on woodworking projects as well.
And again, where do you purchase that?
Also on Amazon.
And at what quantities do you purchase that?
Usually just by the quart, because you don't need much of it for each project. So you don't want to leave a lot of waste because it will just go bad because you're not going to end up using it. So
You don't have large quantities such as multiple gallons of this material, and you don't propose to have that on site, correct?
absolutely not. I don't even believe you could order any of these products in gallons, as far as I know. To my understanding.
Can you buy these at Home Depot?
No, I don't believe you can order them from Home Depot, but you can order them from, like I said, from Amazon or any online retailer.
That's all I have for Mr. Zampano.
Thank you.
Ms. Boswell or Setzler, would either of you care to cross-examine your witness?
Yes. On the test.
Thank you.
It says on. It doesn't sound on.
You have to talk right into it.
Testing. Yes, thank you, Mr. Jennings. I'm Susan Boswell, Mr.
Hi, Susan.
Zampano.
Yes,
I feel a little awkward because I like to face people when I speak to them, but I think it's probably easier for you and me if we both sit.
Okay,
If
sure.
that's okay with you? So
That's
I
fine
don't
with
look at
me.
you, I
Here,
apologize.
I'll turn my chair.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Not trying to be rude. Just on those last couple of questions that Mr. Thompson asked you, how much of these products you just described do you have in your shop at any given time?
I would say probably anywhere from maybe 3 to 6 cans. It's the type of stuff that once you open up, you don't want to leave it around just because it would go bad. It's just a waste of product if you don't use it all. Sometimes they just don't last. Their shelf life cycles are not very long. So, but I usually buy
products that are specific to each project I'm doing, because each project is very specific and they always call for different finishes. So depending on what the client wants, I apologize. Depending on what the client is asking for a finish, I would then order that specific finish for that project.
Okay, what other kinds of finishes would you have? I mean, these are two specific ones that you indicated you use. Do you use other finishes as well?
Yeah, if someone wants a natural finish, all natural, something that is safe for children or a family, I would use more of like a salad bowl finish type thing, something that is just purely for cutting boards or salad bowls type finishes that are 100% natural.
So in terms of all of the finished products,
Yes,
you would
ma'am.
have it in-house at any one time, how much would that be?
Again, maybe in total, maybe 12 cans or a dozen cans at any time of collectively.
And would that include paint as well?
Usually the paint I buy also specific to a project, because every project calls for a different paint color, a different sheen. Someone wants Sherwin Williams, someone wants Benjamin Moore. It always changes from project to project.
Okay. And about how many, if you can estimate, about how many projects are you undergoing at any one time, on average?
For woodworking projects that I would be doing in the shop, usually at most 2 to 3.
Okay.
Sometimes it's 1, depends on which project I'm working on, the scope of work.
And sometimes could it be more?
Generally, no.
Okay.
No, I can only take on so much.
Okay, I got a little bit ahead of myself. If, with the board's permission, I'd like to hand out some pre-marked exhibits. And I apologize, they're not gonna be used in order necessarily, but I thought it would be helpful for you to have them, so we're not running up every time.
The gentleman that like showed us the party, so he should have one. All the board, sure. Okay.
So if you, Mr. Babbitt and Mr. Ottaviano are helping me, if you could hand one to everyone at the front table, I think we have enough. And also to Mr. Thompson and to the witness, Mr. Zampanos. They have one? Okay.
I don't know.
Yes, we do have one.
I gave Thank you.
Okay, do all the board members have a set? Okay, and Mr. Denning, do you have a set?
I do, yes. If we could just go off the record briefly for a moment. I just have a question as far as these exhibits are concerned. Will they be used for your case in chief specifically, or will they be used for both rebuttal, or excuse me, cross-examination of Mr. Zampano?
Yeah, it's for Mr. Zampano's cross. I
Okay.
think they should all be used. And I think it's gonna go relatively quickly once I get them.
Very good.
And you'll notice they start at JD8. There's a reason for that. Ms. Gaines, exhibits are 1 through 7, and they're separate.
Thank you for that. You can go back on the right.
Have an expert. It worked out well. Mr. Jennings, are we back on the record?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that reprieve. Mr. Zampano, as you know, I do represent Jennifer Bean, your next door neighbor, and I have some questions. I think this should go relatively quickly, I hope. You say that you've been in the woodworking business since 2011, is that correct?
Correct.
Can you estimate about how many clients or customers you've had over those years?
I've never quantified it. I'm not sure of the exact number.
You've created a website for your business, is that correct?
Many years ago, yes.
Okay, would you be surprised if I told you there were 46 testimonials on there?
No, it's probably accurate.
Okay, and is that website www.czwoodworking.com?
Correct.
And are you continuing to create or to continue to have that website as you move forward with your business?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to look at ask you to look at some of the exhibits if you would, not necessarily in order, but first, JB11. And I'm sorry, I did not put tabs in each of them, so, but they should be in numerical order.
Sure. This is it. That should be 10. That should be.
When you have it, if you.
JB11, the custom library wall.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that an indication of a project that you've done in CZ Woodworking?
Yes.
That's a fairly large project. Is that a fair
Yes.
characterization? Okay. And you also, your attorney had indicated or had put some exhibits in the record as well. For example, A7 and A6. Those are also examples of, I would say, the exhibits. Fairly large projects that you've done.
A7 was a job I did on site for a client. Yes, correct. And
A6 is a large table.
yeah, it was a large slab. Yes.
Okay. I'd also like you to look at exhibit JB16. And if you could identify for me what that is.
That was a Facebook post I posted for hiring.
Okay, now I believe you testified that you don't have any employees, is that correct?
That's correct.
Why would you be posting for employees?
Well, I think there's probably multiple ways to answer that, but one I believe is that if I have as many, well, Mark Gordon had stated in the last one of the commission meetings that I could have as many employees as I wanted off-site, correct? So I can have one employee on-site if I'd like, but that's.
And so you're saying, when we say employee, what do you think that means? What do you think an employee is?
What an employee is someone who is working directly for someone as an employee.
Are they necessarily being paid?
Yes, I would imagine so.
Okay. Do you have any people who work for you without pay that can come on site?
No, I have a lot of subcontractors that I use and independent contractors, numerous people, independent carpenters, plumbers, electricians, masons.
And would they come on to the sites as you were working at Ardley Circle?
No, they would be doing the work primarily on the off-site work when I'm working in clients' homes or residential properties, which I do quite often.
Okay, so when you're are you still advertising for?
No, there was one post I put up.
Okay. I'd also like you to look at the next one. It should be easy. Exhibit JB17. And could you identify for us what that is, if you would?
Which one is this? I'm sorry.
JB17. It would be the next one right after the one you just.
JB17. Yes, testimonials and reviews. Correct.
Okay, and do you see I've underlined throughout those where it talks about Chris and his team? And I just wondered who those people would have been speaking of.
Sure. A team generally is going to be, anything I do is going to bring a multitude of people. And sometimes I work with architects, designers, subcontractors, excuse me. So there's a number of people that are part of what I do as far as the process. So depending on what the project is, I may bring a number of people in on that project to help and assist with me. So that I'm not trying to do every single thing myself. So.
And don't these people come to your site? I mean, where do you meet with these people?
Oh, these are people that I've developed networks over the years since I was in high school and earlier. Some of them are childhood
No, I
friends.
don't mean where you met them. I meant where do you meet with them?
Oh, if we have a job site installation, we meet at the job site.
Do they ever, would they ever come to this property, CZ Woodworking Garage?
No, not regularly, no.
Not regularly, but ever?
If someone was to meet me there, they could possibly meet me there and then we could go to a job site together, but that's uncommon.
If you could, and by the way, JB11 that we looked at first, did you identify that as from your website? It was an indication of certain work that you do. Certain type of-
Correct, it is from the website, yes.
Okay, thank you. If you could turn to exhibit JB31. And identify for the board, please, what that is.
Stand by, please. Thank you.
It's a certificate.
While they're looking, are you planning additional improvements to your property, Mr. Zampano?
Yes, correct.
Could you describe to the board what they are?
I don't,
You know,
See how
what I
it's
would say to
relevant.
this, I don't think there's any relevance to an in-law suite with a conditional use application.
Well, I think there is a requirement that the property be in compliance. So, and I think it's relevant for the board to understand what is going on generally on the property.
Mr. Zampano was issued a permit for that addition, I think today. He's taken no action on it yet, but I still see no relevance as to whether or not he wants to put an in-law suite on his property. How does that have any relevance to the conditional use standards?
I think that's a fair question. Does the proposed in-law suite have any affiliation whatsoever with the proposed woodworking operation?
absolutely not.
I think that should satisfy your question there.
Well, exhibit JB31, was that a certificate of liability insurance that you filed in connection with your permit application, either for your in-law suite or for the garage?
I believe this was submitted for the garage.
Okay, and I note that it says employment practices liability. Do you know what that is?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, would you, so you don't know if it means you must have employees in order to carry that
I think
policy?
he has an answer that he doesn't know what that means.
Okay. And then finally, I'd like to turn to JB33, which is the very back of the exhibit, so, and ask if you could identify that. JB33.
This is the home-based occupation application that was submitted to East Goshen Township as part of our application process, I believe.
Okay. Could you turn to the third page in that exhibit? At the top, it says home occupation, home-related business, and no impact home-based business application.
Which page?
It says page 2 at the bottom. It is the third page in the exhibit. So it's your cover letter, and then the first page of the application and the second page. It says questions at the top.
Okay, yes, I do see it.
Okay, I'd just like to ask you about how you answered those questions.
Sure.
It says, will you have non-family employees on site? And how did you answer that?
I said yes, one, because by the, I guess by the code and the home-based occupation conditions, I was allowed one employee as part of that. So if I was allowed one, I simply stated that one would be on site.
Okay, but you're not intending to do that at this point in time?
At this point, no.
Okay. Is it fair to say that if you had yourself and another employee on site, you could operate more equipment at one time? Is that a fair statement?
I believe that's fair, sure.
Okay. Also, the first question says, will you have customers or clients visit your business? And you said yes. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, I believe you testified during the hearing on July 9th that you would not have customers or clients visiting the business.
not as a retail operation. I don't have people come on a daily basis. It's something where it would be by invite only. I'm not open to the public. I never have been. It's very rare that I ever have clients or potential clients come to my property or even to my place of business. Usually I go to them. So I was trying to make a fair assessment of if someone was to come to me, at most it would be 6 times a year to discuss a potential project that we're working on.
In light of that, I'd like to turn, if you would, to Exhibit JB12. Once again, my apologies for the back and forth. Could you identify for the board, Mr. Zampano, what exhibit JB12 is?
That is contact information is listed on my website.
Okay, so I see that you have a Glen Mills address on this one. That's your original location? I believe you testified when you first started your business in 2011.
That is correct.
Are you still operating your business at that location?
No, we moved out of that property when we moved into our new property.
Okay, that phone number, is that a business phone number?
That's my cell phone number.
That's your cell phone number, okay. And you have hours of operation listed. Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then Saturday from 9 to 3 and then Sunday closed. Is that accurate as to what it states?
It's accurate as to what it states, correct.
Okay. When you filed your conditional use application, is it correct that you asked for the hours to be from 8 to 5? Am I correct? Is my memory correct there?
I believe that's correct from the original application.
Okay. Subsequently, during a planning commission meeting, you had asked to amend that application to require hours from 7 to 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, but not on Saturday, correct?
No, the application is for Monday through Friday.
Can you explain why you need those additional hours? They're even different than what your website states.
Well, as I stated in one of the planning commission meetings, the only reason I have hours listed on my website is one, just as a kind of professional courtesy to actually have something listed on the website just for appearance sake. The second was because the only number listed on my website is for my cell phone, and I didn't want anyone actually calling me before or after those hours on my mobile phone. So this is primarily just for the hours that I wanted to be in contact or possibly contacted by potential clients.
Okay, well, I see though on the next page, there's a map. Is there not a location map?
Are we talking about exhibit JB13?
We're still talking about exhibit JB 12, yeah. We've been talking about JB 12. I'm sorry, we were discussing exhibit JB 12. You indicated that is from your website, correct? We were talking about the hours of operation.
Yes, correct.
Does your exhibit have a next page?
It does, correct.
Okay. Does it show a location map?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm wondering why you would, I'm sorry, did you just testify? I was distracted a bit. why do you put your address and hours of operation on your website?
I do not have my address on the website.
Okay,
I've never listed my address on the website,
okay.
on my website.
There is an address on this website. On the first page, it says, well, it says Glen Mills, and on the second page, there's a location map for how you get there.
No, that's not actually the exact location of the property. There was just a pin drop in the general location, so that when someone was Google image searching for a woodworking business in the general vicinity, they would have an idea of where I was located. It was basically for marketing purposes. But the actual physical address was not listed, and nor is that pin dropped on my actual address or my previous address.
Okay. Let's turn to the next exhibit, which is JD 13. Maybe, could you identify what this is? Do you know?
This is a Google map listing.
Okay, and if you look at the third page, does it reflect that somebody did a search for CZ woodworking and came up with that long list of things?
Correct.
Okay, and if you look at the right of that third page, it does say CZ Woodworking, 1422 Ardley Circle, Westchester. Is that correct?
That is our correct address, yes.
Okay, so how would that get on social media? This is always frankly a mystery to me, but would not you have had to post that somehow?
I'm not quite sure exactly how that is on a Google search, but my listing, when I applied for an LLC through the State Department of Pennsylvania, you do have to provide an address, so I'm not sure if that's where it came from.
Okay, and I believe that is a location map on the first page above your staircase work that you did. Okay. And then again, on the second page, there's hours of operation listed.
Correct.
So even no matter what your intent might be
Sure.
with your website or whatever, is it true that people can search for your woodworking and find exactly where you are and how to get there? And might suppose that because there's hours of operation that they are free to come there.
I think that calls for speculation, so I would object to that question.
I'll sustain the objection.
I think I'm gonna make it easier for everyone and just start going through the exhibits in order. So that might facilitate things. If you start at JB 8, could you identify for the board what this is? And where it came from?
JD is a customized questionnaire that is listed on my website. It's one of the pages you can click on my website.
Okay. And your website is still current. I mean, it's still ongoing, existing, correct?
It is an existing website, but it's not necessarily up to date by any means.
Okay. So if you look at on the first page, the type of project that you offer for people, some of those are quite large, are they not? For example, a dining table, we saw an example of that earlier, correct?
Correct.
An entertainment center,
Correct.
kitchen cabinets.
There are, yes.
Is it fair to say that a lot of those items would be large items?
I think that's all relative to the project.
Okay. And on the next page, you at the top, you ask for different styles, but I'm interested in the middle of that page that talks about select your material.
Okay.
It says, and correct me if I'm reading it incorrectly, but I am interested in the following types of materials and or finishes. And it says you can select multiple options. So I see various types of wood, correct?
Correct.
But I also see glass listed. correct?
Correct.
So you do work with glass as well as wood?
I have companies that I use that make glass for me. If someone would like a glass shelf as part of a cabinetry project, I would have them, or a glass panel for a door, I would have them fabricate the glass for me.
And where would the glass be inserted into the cabinet or whatever the piece was on your site?
No, generally do it on the client's, on their property so that you don't, if you put it into the piece, let's say it's a glass door on a glass, the glass panel on a cabinet door, you wouldn't want to transport it with the glass in there because it would risk damage. So usually I would pick it up directly from the glass company and then install it on site once I install the cabinetry.
But do you work with glass at all on site?
No, I have no idea how to work with glass.
Okay. You also offer painted finishes,
Correct.
which I think we discussed earlier. I'm also interested in the stained, the option for staining. And I believe you might have testified you don't stain. Do you stain on site?
Rubio Monocoat has a whole an array of finishes they offer that offer a number of different stain colors. Essentially, they have pigments that are added to them, so that would be part of the stain, quote unquote, staining process.
Okay, and when I say on site, I'm referring to the 1422 Arley Road address.
That would be the
Understood?
Rubio Monocoat, correct?
Okay. I'm also interested in, if you see the third column, the second from the bottom, it says wrought iron and metal.
Okay.
Do you work with that on site?
No, I do not know how to do metalworking at all. I have a couple different artisans that I work with that are metal workers that I commission them to fabricate metalworking pieces for me.
And then how would those pieces get attached to whatever else you were making?
Well, I'm working on a balcony project right now for a client where I will be building the balcony and the metal worker will be fabricating the wrought iron railings. And then they would actually install the railings once I fabricated and built the balconies. So that would happen on site.
So do you work with wrought iron or metal in your shop on site?
Absolutely not. I do not know how to work with metal.
Okay. So let's move on to Exhibit JB9, since I promised we'd go in order. And if you could identify for the board what this is and where it came from.
JB9 is from my website. I believe it's from the materials page on the website.
Okay. Starting at additional materials, it says examples of additional materials we use are wrought iron, steel, glass, stone, and more. You've just discussed wrought iron and glass. Do you work with stone on site?
On job sites I would, not in my shop.
Not in your shop? You don't know how to work with stone either?
I'm not a mason, I'm a woodworker, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just asking. Okay, and then moving on to the finishes section. There's a list of different types of finishes that you use. And you'll have to forgive me because you are clearly the expert and I am clearly not. But if you could briefly describe what each of those finishes is, like Danish oil, what is that and when would you use that?
I will note that this doesn't necessarily represent the finishes I do use. This was created many years ago for my website by me, kind of as an ambitious way to offer different services that I could provide for potential clients. Not that I actually use all of these products or know professionally about all these products. They're just things that were essentially to post onto a website in order to kind of get clickbait, so to speak, for SEO optimization.
Do you use Danish oil?
I do not.
Do you know what it is?
I do know what Danish oil is, yes.
Okay. Do you use lacquer?
I do not.
Next category. Do you use tongue oil?
I have in the past, I do not anymore.
You use paint? Correct?
Yes, frequently.
Does the paint have an odor?
All the painting I do is off-site at a different location, but it depends on the paint product, yes. Some have odors and some do not, if they're low VOCs or zero VOCs.
I thought you said that you have you kept paint on site. I thought when you were talking in the beginning,
If I purchase it for a project, I would store it basically at my location until I was ready to paint the project off-site.
you don't paint on site.
No.
Okay. How about the next page, polyurethane? I think I can say, and if you'll agree or not, that smells, does it not?
Yeah, polyurethane it definitely has an odor to it. That's one of the reasons why I've actually gotten away from polyurethane. Once I discovered Rubio monocoat, in all honesty, it's kind of been a game changer for me and for my business, as well as many woodworkers who I network with. You don't really need to go through a two-stage process anymore. You used to have to stain a piece of wood, and then you would have to polyurethane it or lacquer it. Now, Rubio monocoat gives you the ability to just finish the wood in one coat application. It kind of kills two birds with one stone, so to speak.
Okay, and finally, staining. You did describe that a little bit a few minutes ago, I believe. The ruby monocoat that you're describing, does that have an odor?
It's 0 VOCs, so no odor
And
whatsoever.
so what does VOC mean?
I think it's volatile organic compounds. Yeah.
And does that necessarily mean it doesn't smell? I don't know.
It has some sort of odor to it. It's not odorless. It just doesn't have any volatile organic compounds, which are the ones that are harmful. Just because something has a smell, I don't believe it's necessarily harmful.
While we're talking about smells, do you have some kind of a venting system in your shop, or would you, again, all these questions are hypothetical, if you give the approval, would you have a venting system?
I generally do not have ventilation systems because I don't have booths set up, so to speak. So if I was doing a project like a Rubio monocoat, there's no real need for a ventilation system because it has a 0 VOC once again. So.
Okay. I believe we already talked about JB11, the custom library wall. But we skipped 10, my esteemed co-counsel tells me, thank you. Could you identify what exhibit JB10 is?
JB10, I believe, is from my website where I had did a blog post, I believe. I think it's from my blog, which I don't believe I blogged in years, on the website for refinishing surface I had offered to a client.
But do you do refinishing services
I
currently?
do not. I actually, I believe I stated that in the last planning commission meeting that I had done. I think in the 8 years I've actually done woodworking professionally with my own business, I have only refinished 2 different projects. One was done on site at a client's house in Westchester, where I refinished 2 tabletops on site while they were away on vacation at their shore home, and the other one was for Rivercrest Golf Club in Phoenixville, Collegeville area, where I refinished mahogany doors for them. It was a horrible process, and I don't want to do it again.
Okay, but all of these services that you're saying you don't do, these finishes you don't offer, they are currently on your website as being offered, is that correct?
Yes, my website is way out of date.
If you could turn to exhibit JB14. And identify what that is, please.
JB14 is another Facebook post.
Okay, could you read, did you post this?
I did.
And do you know when you posted it?
I believe April 18th at 9:47 p.m.
Of 2019?
Yes, it was 2019, correct.
Okay. Could you read the first line under CZ Woodworking, April 18th, what it states?
Sure. Future office space, design center, and showroom at CZ Woodworking at the new #Ardley workshop. Electric is the, do you want me to keep going?
That's fine. Is the picture below, it's a little hard to see, I didn't take a great copy, but can you identify where that is?
That is in my detached 2-car garage in the 2nd floor loft.
Is that what you're referring to as the man cave?
Yes, correct.
But in this posting, you're referring to it as office space, design center, and showroom.
Yes. I would have to say that a social media post that had a couple of hashtags referring to these things as far as the showroom and the office space and the home office aren't necessarily anything I intend to do in that space. It's the only time I've ever hashtagged either any of those items. And I would also say that it's not really a practical place to do any of those things regardless. There's no running water, there's no bathroom, there's no heating, there's no air conditioning in this building. So it'd probably be the worst showroom or
But you did.
design center anyone could ever imagine. So.
Okay, moving on to JB 15. Could you identify what this is, please?
It's another Instagram post that I posted.
And can you read right up where it says 144 likes? Can you read under that what it says?
CZ Woodworking, light it up. Temp lighting is in place at the #Artley workshop. The full exterior lighting package will be coming soon.
I think it's fair to say my client is somewhat concerned about what kind of lighting you have in mind for the garage.
Sure. Well, I know by code, I believe I am required to have lighting. I believe I said in one of the planning commission meetings, I do have to have security lights and different lights on the shop space itself. But even just for our own purposes, we wanted to make sure we had ample lighting on the building for security purposes. There's 2 gooseneck lights, one over each garage door. And then I was going to put an additional light on the side of the building, 2 security lights, one on each side of the building at the top of the building. And then landscape lighting at some point down the road, there'll be uplighting on the building itself. I think it's going to be beautiful.
Okay, we already talked about JB 16 and JB 17. So if you could, Mr. Zampano, you recall the acoustic expert who testified at the last hearing, correct, Mr. Thornton?
Of course, yes.
If you're able to get a copy of his report, Exhibit A4, I believe, do you have that handy?
Okay. Yes, I have it.
Okay. You beat me. If you could please turn to page 5 of Exhibit A4, please. Is that a list of the equipment that was tested when Mr. Thornton was at the site testing for sound? Page 5 of Exhibit A4.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to have you identify the next several exhibits. I'm not going to discuss them really with you, but could you identify what Exhibit JB18 is?
Sorry, is this cross-examination or can she? We're here to ask questions.
No, it is because we talked about, all of these pieces of equipment were discussed in the report. And I believe Mr. Zampano testified that he took part in that.
I'll allow it. We'll see where this is going.
Okay, it's not a big point. I can just call him on our case. So it's just quicker to get it done. Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Can you identify what Exhibit JB18 is?
Tablespoon. Do you want me to go into the full?
Now, is it an instruction and parts manual for the piece of equipment that's listed as number 1 in the acoustic report?
It appears to be, yes.
Okay. Turning to Exhibit JB19. Are you able to identify that as the manual for the piece of equipment that is listed as number 2 on page 5 of the expert's
I guess I'm
report?
just gonna object, I hope that the council's gonna have someone authenticate these, because these are something that we've never seen before. And if he's authenticating this manual, then I don't think that's correct use of time.
Well, I'm asking him if he knows what it is, and he does or he doesn't, and a future witness, I believe, is going to talk about it with him. I mean, do you have the operating manuals for the equipment that you use?
Possibly, I'm not sure.
You don't know, you don't read them?
I don't read manuals generally, I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you identify what exhibit JB19 is?
It says it's the owner's manual of the AFS 1000B air filtration system.
And that's this,
The owner's manual for the AFS-1000B air filtration.
thank you, and these are actually excerpts, I would say. I think if you look at every page, you can see they're excerpts, they're not the entire manual. Could you identify what exhibit JB20 is, please?
The JET 14-inch woodworking bandsaw, model JWBS-14CS.
Is that the same piece of equipment that is identified as number 3 on page 5?
It appears to be, yes.
Okay. Exhibit JB21.
JET operating instructions and parts manual for the 6-inch woodworking joiner, model JJ-6CSDX.
And is that the same model that is listed as number 4 on page 5 of the expert report?
It appears to be, yes.
Okay. And finally, could you identify what JB22 is?
DeWalt's DWS 780 12-inch double bevel sliding compound miter saw.
Again, he's not identifying what the document is. All he can do is just read what's on the front of the page. I don't think my client has any understanding of what this is. So he's not identifying it. All he's doing is reading what's on
Well,
the
Mr.
page.
Thompson, he can say that. You don't need to testify for him, with all due respect.
All right, so just before we go any further, the objections are noted. I think that Ms. Boswell has cross-referenced the listing from the expert with the identification of the piece of equipment. And I believe that the witness has confirmed in each of these instances that what he's reading is a piece of machinery that he has that has been tested.
I don't think he's been asked that question.
Okay.
If she wants to answer the question, she can.
Sure.
Okay, well, if we can identify 22, and then I'll ask you that question. Did you say the model number? It's DWS 780.
Yes, correct.
Okay, on the list, number 5, I believe it says it's model DWS 779. Do you know if DWS model 779 is still available to be purchased?
I don't know.
Is that the piece of equipment that you are currently using?
Correct.
Would currently use, okay. Do you know the differences between the two models, DWS?
I do not, I'm sorry.
Okay,
But I think I would object to this
well-
because he said he doesn't know what this model is.
That's fair. I'll sustain that objection and just remind everybody that the board will afford what it deems to be relevant evidence the weight that it deserves. So,
understood, that's fair. And so are all of these things, with the exception of JB22, equipment that you plan to have in your shop?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And those were the pieces of equipment that were tested per the acoustic report, correct?
Correct.
Okay. While we're talking about equipment, how many pieces of equipment do you intend to have at the site?
I don't have a number on it, I'm sorry.
You don't have a number,
I've never counted how many pieces of equipment I have.
okay? How many tools do you have?
Hand tools or power tools or
Well, start any way you like. How about power tools? What
Well-
kind of power tools do you have, number one?
Well, the power tools that are all listed, plus additional power tools that are not listed, but
Which include, can you give us some examples?
a multi-tool, a spindle sander, a disc sander, circular saws, sawzalls, things I use off-site as well as on-site, a number of power tools as well as hand tools.
Okay, and what are some examples of hand tools?
Hammers, hand planes, chisels, scrapers, just any number of probably thousands of hand tools.
Thousands of hand tools?
I mean, there's like maybe 50 different screwdrivers, or 100 different screwdrivers. There's lots of hand tools.
Okay. Do those make noise? Say
Hand
hammers,
tools?
do hammers make noise? Hammers is a hand tool, right?
I believe it is, but I don't know if it's viewed as a continuous noise as deemed by the ordinance.
Well, I didn't ask you about the ordinance. I asked you if hammers make noise.
I think
I think we
I'm
know.
gonna object that the hammer in and of itself doesn't make noise.
Does a hammer pounding on wood make noise?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. And so I'd like to turn out of order briefly to, bear with me 1 minute, please. Exhibit JB 27.
Okay, yes.
Could you identify what this is, please, for the board?
This was the updated decibel readings that we had taken on the 29th of May with myself, Mark Gordon, and I believe Mark Thompson was also there as well.
Okay, and I'm just looking at the second page of that at the equipment at the top. And I'm trying to compare that to the equipment listed on Exhibit A4, page 5. It seems as though there was more equipment tested with Mr. Thornton's test than what was listed. Is that correct?
Correct. The commissioner of the chairman of the planning commission had asked for additional machines to be tested if we did choose to bring in an acoustic expert to do additional decibel readings.
So did you buy additional equipment between those?
I don't believe so.
I'm just curious why on that first date you didn't test the jointer model, number 4. Or I think that I'm not sure what the other one was. Oh, the router model.
The rigid 2 horsepower.
Right. You
The rigid 2 horsepower router.
So why weren't those tested in May?
The reason I tested the machines I tested initially was just to put my best foot forward to select the machines I thought made the most noise in the shop, and those are the machines I selected.
So that's not reflective of neither of these lists, either the list from the May test or the list from Mr. Thornton's test represent the entirety of the equipment that you own and will operate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. One final question on this point. Do you remember that you had done a sound test in your, I guess, your Delaware office?
Yes, correct.
Could you remind me where that is?
That's 2311 Sconset Road in Arden, Delaware.
If you could turn to Exhibit JB 32, please, and identify what that is.
Those were the original decibel readings that I had voluntarily offered to the township during the planning commission meetings in order to address noise issues.
Okay, and what I'm interested in are again, the equipment that was tested at that time, and I believe I'm seeing equipment that we haven't heard of since. For example, on the second page, a combo 15-inch planer. I don't believe that that was in either of the subsequent two noise tests. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Are you going to be using a planer?
Unfortunately, my planer did get damaged during transportation from my old shop to my new shop and never made it to the new shop. So I was unable to test it from that point on.
Okay, I think I also see an 18-inch bandsaw that wasn't listed subsequently. Do you have that?
Correct. I do still have that machine that runs off of 220 volts, which I do not currently have in my garage space.
Where is it?
It's just in storage.
Okay, are you planning to put it in the garage space?
I would
if
plan to use it,
approved?
yes, correct.
Okay. The 6-inch jointer, is that the same as the 6 1/4-inch jointer?
That is the same joint, correct.
Okay. A combo 10-inch table saw, was that tested?
The combo means there's a combination of two different machines running at the same time. That was how I listed that. So that was just the table saw combo plus whatever other machine I was running at that time. So it was the same table saw.
Okay, the next page, Laguna 18-inch bandsaw, that's one that was not subsequently tested, is that correct?
That was the one I just referred to that is in storage.
Okay. I was referred to differently, I guess. And the other two items were tested subsequently, is that correct?
The
The bottom two
Yes,
items?
yes.
Okay, thank you. While we're talking about the Delaware office, can you explain for the board why you moved from your Thornberry Township business space to Delaware?
Sure. Well, there's a number of reasons, some personal, but for business purposes, it's kind of just an opportunity to take on a different venture, to try something different to get out of the actual garage. And we wanted some sort of disconnect between my business and actual personal life. So in order to get it out of the actual garage and to put it into an actual shop.
Okay, did you continue using the garage for woodworking when you had the Delaware?
I don't believe so. Maybe from time to time, but I don't believe so.
And now, did you lease the Delaware space?
Yes, there was a lease.
Okay, is that lease still ongoing?
No, that lease was terminated at the end of May of this year.
So, where did all of your equipment and tools and supplies go?
In storage.
Okay, where, on your property or?
Yeah, somewhere in my property, somewhere in an off-site location in a storage unit.
Okay. And I believe you testified that Arden, Delaware site was 800 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and did you use all of that space?
I mean, it was used for storage for machines, for, there's a lot of wood storage, things of that nature. I mean, it was scattered throughout the space, but probably not as efficiently as I would have liked, so.
So why did you decide to move from the Delaware location to a residential location for your business?
I think it's a very personal question, but I think there's a number of reasons why I can answer that. Most of them are personal, but one would be to be closer to my family and my daughter. I love to be around for my daughter as she grows up instead of being always off some other location working, to actually be there to be able to pick her up from school or to be close to her in days if she's sick and I'm working at home, to be able to cut down on transportation costs and emissions. Financial reasons, there's a number of reasons. So,
I believe you said in your testimony that you looked at, I think, hundreds of places to buy before you bought 1422 Arley Circle.
yes, approximately, yes, correct.
Okay, were any of those commercial locations or industrial locations?
Every property we looked at was residential. Our primary use is for our family.
And you are diminishing the size of your operation 300 square feet, correct? And how is it that you're going to be able to do that?
More efficient use of space, but also the square footage doesn't take in the volume The one side of the shop is actually 18 feet to the ridge, I believe, of the building, so I'm able to actually utilize the volume more for storage and cabinetry.
Do you store, I mean, you said you could work on 2 or 3 projects at a time. And so you obviously would be storing those, projects as they're being made on site, correct?
It depends on the scope of the project, yes.
Okay. A question I forgot to ask you when we're talking about the large size products that you make. How do you get them from, or how would you get them from the garage to the person who's buying them?
Usually in my trailer. I have an enclosed 7 by 16 foot trailer.
Do you need helpers to carry them from your shop to your trailer?
It depends on the scope of the work. Most of the time I'm able to handle projects myself. You get very creative when you're a one-man show.
So you can carry those big, large items by yourself?
It depends on the scope of the project, but if it was a large slab table, then they actually bring in some help to help move it out of my garage onto my trailer.
Okay, so you would need helpers on occasion? Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So going back to our exhibit book. Okay. If you could look at JB 23, please, and identify who the board what that is.
Pennsylvania Department of State, Borough of Corporation, and Charitable Organizations.
Is this the certificate of organization for an LLC for your CZ woodworking business?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. And you're intending to continue operating as an LLC?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Babbitt is now going to hand out what's been marked as Exhibit JB 24. It's a series of pictures.
Yes.
Do you have the exhibit, Mr. Zampano?
I do, yes.
Can you identify what exhibit JB 24 photograph 1 is, please?
That's a picture of our shed. It's a 12 by 20 shed. It's on the corner of our property.
It's on the corner of the property. Is it in a side yard or any kind of yard, do you know?
Back rear yard?
It's in the rear yard? Okay. And can you identify what those items are to the left of the shed?
Yeah, it's there's a couple of ladders and there's some wood storage.
And what is that wood storage for?
Firewood.
For your home?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And how many ladders are there?
I believe 2.
Just 2? Okay. There's a stack of something under the blue tarps. Do you know what that is?
Just wood.
Wood under the tarps. Okay. JB 24 photograph 2. Could you identify what that is, please?
It's the same structure, just different perspective, further back.
Okay. And there's a truck parked in front of your garage. Could you identify what that is, please?
I believe it's my truck.
Yeah, I think on your application for the home occupation permit, you had identified 2 vehicles that are going to be on the property. I'm turning back to exhibit JB 33. And the second page, it says there is a GMC Sierra 1500. Is that the truck that we're seeing in the photograph?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Do you have just one truck?
I do, yes.
And where do you typically park it?
Usually in the general vicinity of my garage.
Outdoors?
Outdoors, yeah, correct.
Okay. Could you identify what photograph 3 is, exhibit JB24?
It's a picture of my detached two-car garage as well as my truck, I believe.
And finally, exhibit JB24, photograph 4. Could you identify what that is?
It's another picture of my property with the garage and my trailer and the swing set and a couple of people on the property.
And going back to your home occupation permit, which is exhibit JB33, would that be the 7x14 enclosed trailer that you're listing?
That is correct.
Okay. And where do you typically park that?
It's generally parked in the back rear corner of the property, generally further back to the, I don't know what direction, but to the top left corner of the image shown.
Okay, do you ever park it in front of the garage?
Yeah, at times, yes.
And I guess you have to park it there when you're moving
Yeah, of course.
product in and out.
Correct.
JB28, if you could turn to that. I have a specific question about that.
I don't.
Um,
Okay.
Could you identify what that is?
That is the, excuse me, that is the building and zoning permit application for the residential addition where we just got approved and we currently have a permit for our property.
Okay, I'm interested in where it says under contractor information, item 3, CZ Woodworking. That's your business phone, you identify that as your cell phone, doing carpentry work, and there's 2 numbers listed there. Could you explain what those numbers are?
The PA 114226, that's my Pennsylvania licensed contractor number.
Okay,
The home improvement contractor number, the HIC number, and the C04751, I can include that is.
okay.
I think that was written in by the township.
Okay. You mentioned it's a home inspection contractor number. And you also
Home improvement contract.
I'm sorry, home improvement
Yes,
contractor number.
HIC number, I believe is the acronym.
Okay, you referenced in the first hearing on July 9th that you also have a contracting business.
It's the same business, but it's a different capacity of how I operate my business. Some of it is done as custom woodworking in a shop. Some of it is done offsite as a general contractor.
Okay, where do you do the paperwork for that contracting business?
Generally, it's on my computer, sitting in bed at night.
Okay, so that would be in your residence.
In my residence, yes.
Okay. And what are the activities that you do on your property as part of your contracting business?
There is no contracting business. It's a woodwork. CZ Woodworking is my business.
So do you have employees then? You made a distinction, I thought, between the two at the first hearing.
My distinction is the amount of time I spend on each aspect of my business. About 60% is what I had stated about this. I was just trying to give a breakdown as far as the amount of time I dedicate toward actual woodworking in the shop versus time I spend off-site doing general contracting type work and or installations and deliveries of the projects that I do fabricate in my shop. But it's the same business.
Are you registered as a contractor in East Goshen Township?
I am, yes.
Okay. And so that the contracting aspect of CZ we're working, does that have any employees?
It does not, no.
Are there pickups or deliveries from your property as part of that, part of your business?
No, all that material, if I was doing a deck construction for a client, I would have all that material delivered directly to the client's home from the lumberyard.
So do you have any outside storage in connection with the contracting aspect of your business?
No, because that material goes directly to clients' homes, whether it's drywall or trim work, deck materials, any of those materials generally go directly to the client's homes. So it would be the same thing as if anyone hired a general contractor to perform work on their home. Usually you get the material delivered directly to your house.
Ms. Boswell?
Yes,
If I may, I'm interested in getting the stenographer and everyone else a break, because we're at about the halfway point.
that's fine. I'm almost done, but that's
Okay,
fine.
just a few more minutes, you think? I'm not trying to rush you whatsoever.
Yeah, I think a break would be great.
All right, let's take 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, but there's only one special. Oh, that's right, and you cannot ever find it. No, I can find it. Okay, there you go. Yeah. We have some great lines. Everything out there. My favorite one is, it's nice. This is good. Oh, yeah. Yeah. How do we get dirty? There you go. Yes, he likes to use now. Yeah. Mark, when you get in a shed these days, you have to put you require the hurricane straps to go down. Some do. Oh, the L's? Yeah. 16.
Start the song and dance now.
Don't do it, because you know you can do it better.
A number of pieces of.
Yes.
That's why. All this
Yeah.
But that's how. We're gonna have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it disappeared.
Okay.
Like a military looking thing, like
My mother is currently living, but it's not too big.
And it's a fun fight. Just got back to Nova Scotia and they had a great time there. The cat trails. Kathy and I so I said, if you really mess this up, I don't think that's you know, the water like there. Whatever that is, because the way the currents go. It's not just what it is. It's probably like God. Yeah, it's a beautiful pastoral building.
All right, yes. All right, we're gonna go back on the record now.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. You mentioned that, Mr. Zampano, that you store certain items or you would store certain items in your shop.
Correct.
Okay, and those items you said were supplies for particular jobs that you're working on, is that correct?
Yeah, sandpaper, extra saw blades, any number of things. Wood material as well for that project or other projects.
Okay, what else do you store there?
Just as I stated, things that I would use for woodworking purposes, whether it's tools or just any number of items that would allow me to get the job done, as far as things like sandpaper and chisels and hand planes and.
Can you estimate the value of all of the assets of CZ Woodworking?
I cannot. I've never actually evaluated it.
You know how much you spend on your tools and equipment and supplies?
Some of these are tools I've had for hand-me-downs from my grandfather. Some are things I've had since I was a child. Some things I've acquired over the years. This has been a lifelong process. So I have no idea what the value is, to be honest with you. It's invaluable.
Okay, the ladders that we viewed in Exhibit JB 24, photographs 1 and 2, could you explain what they're used for?
The one, I'm sorry?
The ladders that are located to the left of the shed.
If anyone was taking pictures of me when I was cleaning out my gutters, they would probably see that I was cleaning out my gutters with one of these ladders just the other week.
Okay. The other ladder, is that used in your contracting business?
It was actually used recently to go up on top of my roof to the two-car garage to clean off debris from the pine trees that constantly clog the gutters up there and also drop debris and branches on top of that roof.
It's clear, I think, that you sell the products that you make in your woodworking business. Do you sell them?
I don't give them away for free now.
Okay, so you
Yes.
you get money for them. Is your
Of course.
business intended to be for profit?
Yes.
Okay. You testified on page 85 of the last hearing that your business is not a quote retail business. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think if you could go online and order something directly from my website, that would be retail, such as Amazon. No one can actually order anything specifically from my website, nor they can order it from me. You can't come and buy wood from me, wood slabs. You can't buy cutting boards. I don't sell anything retail.
Okay. Could a customer come to you at your shop and order something, look at what you have available? They could come and make a deal with you at your shop, correct?
It's not at all how I operate. Not
No.
even close. No,
Okay.
sorry.
How do customers find you?
Mostly word of mouth. I have a very dedicated clientele who value my work immensely, and they've repeat clients mostly. Probably about 90% of the work I do for clients, I end up doing more work for them, for their friends, family members. It's mostly word of mouth. I don't pay for advertising.
But you do have a social media imprint, do you
Sure.
not?
Absolutely, it's absolutely a huge asset to any business these days.
And So how is customer contact made? They find your phone number and they call you, is that it?
Yeah, I think my Instagram page has my phone number, my website, and my email address listed.
And how is the sale made?
It's a long process. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes, usually I'm booked at least 6 months out on those projects. So, but usually a client contacts me with an inquiry. I reply back with the general list of questions. They would then hopefully respond back with the answers to those questions if they're serious about moving forward. Sometimes they just never reply back because they don't want to put out the effort. It's a very customized process, so there's no standard. I've literally written probably thousands and thousands of emails that not a single one is the same because everything is commission based. I never built the same thing twice. So that process is a very customized process from start to the time I actually receive a deposit from the client.
Okay, can you just briefly describe the distinction between what you do in your woodworking business and what you do in your contracting business? What activities take place on the property?
I cannot build a deck on my property, so I build that on a client's property. I cannot do a remodel in someone's home or in my shop. I would have to do it on their property. Things that are actual fine woodworking pieces are done in my shop. Things that are more general contracting or carpentry type jobs are done on job sites.
Okay, where do you do the billing paperwork for the woodworking aspect of your business?
It's just done on a computer, on a MacBook.
In your residence?
Wherever I am, it could be in a Starbucks coffee shop.
Okay. How are the materials that you use in your shop discarded? For example, what types of materials would you create that needed to be discarded, first of all?
You try to maximize efficiency. So if you estimate that you approximately need exactly 75 board feet per project, you try and get as close to that as possible. It's very tight margins sometimes, especially when the material you use is very expensive. So you try to maximize your efficiency, which I take pride in. But a lot of it is sawdust or wood shavings that then just go in trash bags, get discarded with normal trash, where I take them off-site to job sites where I have dumpsters, and I can dispose them in dumpsters on job sites.
How about the materials you described earlier that you stain your products with, or that you coat them with? What happens with those?
The materials, as far as like the rags that I would use to apply it.
Rags is one, and the cans, or do they come in cans?
Yeah, they come in cans, yes.
Okay, so what do you do with the rags, first of all?
Usually you have to let them dry out overnight, so you just lay them flat, just anywhere really in your shop. You can just lay them flat, let them dry out overnight, and then they can be put into a disposable container and discarded of.
And how about the cans or plastic containers that the stuff comes in?
You can just let them dry out with drying agents, just like you would if you had a paint can left over for painting, remodeling your bathroom. You just let it dry out, and you put a drying tab in there and just allow it to dry, and then dispose of it after that. Or you,
Your regular trash.
yeah, or you can take it off-site to off-site facilities. So.
Would you do both things?
Yeah, it depends on the product I'm using. Sure.
Okay. You had introduced an exhibit that shows the layout of your shop, or your proposed shop. I believe that was exhibit A11.
That's correct.
I'm just wondering how you are blocking off one area from another.
With shelving.
With shelving, okay. But this, is it fair for me to say that the planning commission had asked you to give a plan that actually shows where each piece of equipment is going to go?
That is not correct, to my knowledge.
Where specific storage would go?
I don't believe so. You could, I guess we'll have to check the records, but I don't believe so.
Okay, but you haven't done that and presented that to the township, correct?
No, the building isn't being completed as far as the construction, so I'm not at that stage yet.
Okay. I'm unclear on the sign. I believe you also introduced a sign diagram, exhibit A13. Can you explain where you're going to put that sign?
I'm not quite sure yet, but it depends on where I'm allowed to. I would love to have put that sign initially not actually freestanding. I wanted to put it just on the side of the building on the detached two-car garage, where it wouldn't have been visible from the street. We would basically be the only ones that could probably view it, and I was told I was unable to do that. So I had to put this together as a secondary option, and I'm not sure yet wherever I'm allowed to, I guess. But it would not be on the street. We don't want to put it on the street. We don't want to draw attention to the shop, and it's not open to the public, as I've stated numerous times. So it would not be visible from the street.
Why do you need a sign? Why do you want a
This has
sign?
been my dream since I was probably in grade school. So I think that's another very personal question.
You mentioned that your family would be the only ones that could see it. There are a couple of exhibits that you guys have introduced, and I don't know that you need to actually turn to them, but the aerial is one, Exhibit A8. I think Exhibit A10 is also one that shows aerial with distances. They show a lot of foliage between your property and my client, Ms. Bean's property. Is that correct?
At A10,
A10.
following the line of 90 yards.
What I'm asking you is, are all those trees, you know where, the copy that I have is not even legible. I mean, it's all black. But is it true that both those exhibits show a lot of trees between your property and the Bean property?
As a direct line of sight, I can't tell from this image, I'm sorry.
Are there any trees between your property and
There are trees, yes, correct.
there are trees? But do you think that that Miss Bean can, never mind, I can ask for that. Do you have any partners in your CZ woodworking business?
No, it's a sole proprietor LLC. My partner is my wife.
Do you weld on
I
site?
do not weld it. Once again, I'm not a metal worker.
Right, how many parking spaces are available? I believe you said 2 or 3 or more last time. Is it possible that you could have 5 spaces right outside your garage?
I don't believe so. Probably not 5, because we have our own residential spaces as well for our cars.
If this is approved, will you have any other locations for your woodworking operations? I'm not talking about when you go to people's homes. I'm talking about another shop.
Sure. No, not currently in the plan, no.
Okay. I'm just curious what a CNC machine is. The planning commission recommended condition that not be allowed. What is that?
I believe, I don't have one, but I believe it's a computer navigated control, I believe. I'm not sure what the acronym actually stands for. So CNC is an automated machine that basically runs off of a CAD program, a computer aided design program, where you can punch in coordinates and the machine does all the work for you. It's kind of the antithesis of how I operate my business.
How did that sign that we just looked at, how did that get made? Did you make it? It's signed in Exhibit A13. Is that an existing sign? Or did
Oh yeah, no, that sign I had made by a really great artisan metal worker out of Louisiana, I believe. I forget the name of it, I'm sorry, but
you didn't make that?
I commissioned someone to build it for me.
Okay.
They did it on a CNC plasma machine, I would have to imagine, which is a metal cutting CNC machine.
Do you have plans to buy additional equipment for this shop?
Not at this moment.
Or any plans to expand your business?
No.
Why did you, I believe we talked about the fact that you did ask for greater hours. Why do you need longer hours?
Well, I would have to say, in all honesty, with the attention that the neighbors have given this project, which we never anticipated, and I also am going to be planning on using it for personal use, I wouldn't want to walk into my own building on my site at an hour that's before the designated hour of operation in order to do something personally and have someone actually be viewing that negatively or trying to document it and use it against me, which is one of the main reasons why. If I'm going into my man cave at 10 o'clock at night to do something for personal business, that's completely personal.
How is it that the neighbors, or the township for that matter, are supposed to know what you're doing in there, whether it's personal or whether it's for your business?
I don't believe they do the right to know what I'm doing in my personal space. Well,
I do think that this is introducing a commercial, manufacturing, industrial use into a residential neighborhood. And I think there are clearly restrictions in the ordinance as to what you can and can't do. So this is why, the neighbors, I don't want to speak for them, they can speak for themselves, but I don't imagine they're trying to be difficult, they're trying to retain their quality of life. Do you resent them for that?
I'm sorry, this goes beyond the question that was asked. I don't even know if that was a statement or a question.
I don't either. If you care to rephrase that, maybe we'll entertain it, otherwise I'll sustain the objection.
You made a comment about because of the way the neighbors have acted in this case, you want to expand the hours. Is that a neighborly thing to do?
That's
I don't
not,
think
that's not the point of what I was trying to make.
I'm just asking you to clarify what you meant.
I don't want to be able to have to walk into my garage at 7 a.m. in the morning in order to do something personally and have someone make a complaint to the township that he's in the building outside of the hours of operation. If I said the hours of operation were 8 o'clock, even though it's personal use. So, I don't want their, I'm trying to, the ordinance says I could be in there from 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. at night or 10 p.m. at night. I condense that down to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I'm lucky if I ever get out of my house, usually before 8 o'clock or 7:45 because of our family obligations. So, in all reality, it's very unrealistic that I would be working before 8 or after 5. But I figured if the ordinance said I was allowed to do it from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night, I might as well take advantage of those hours of operation as a parameter of the condition of use.
Would it make a difference if you could limit the time you're working machinery that's noisy?
Would it make a difference to my operation?
In other words, I think on your website, am I correct in saying that you pride yourself in trying to limit use of equipment?
I did. That is correct.
Okay, so if you want to be able to walk into your garage at 7 a.m., is there any reason you have to be able to turn your equipment on at 7 a.m.?
Not necessarily, no. I probably wouldn't be allowed by my wife anyway, but it's.
Well, just a couple more things. The shed that we saw, did you have a permit for that shed?
Which shed, I'm sorry.
The shed, I'm sorry, that we saw in exhibit JB 30.
That shed was existing on the property when we moved in. We did put it in our site plan when we applied for the 2-car garage that would be moved from the original location up to the current location that is pictured in exhibit JB-24. And it was inspected by the inspector and approved at the time of the inspection.
Is there a permit for the location for that shed? And I misspoke, it's exhibit JB-24, you're correct. Do you have a permit for the location of that shed?
I believe we do, yes. I believe the township could probably answer that better than I could, but yes. To my understanding, it was approved, it was inspected, and it was all within the building plans.
Looking at exhibit JB 30, please. Do you know what that is?
I do not know what this is.
Okay. You would agree it's called a zoning approval review dated January 8th, 19,
He
right?
said he doesn't know what it is.
And I said, would he agree with me that it's called a zoning approval review dated January 8th of 19? And I believe his name is referenced in the document, and I was going to try to get him to refresh his memory as to what this is.
All right, I'll allow limited questions on this as to,
This is going toward one of the elements of the conditional use that the property must be in compliance. And that's what this is being offered for. And if he doesn't know, he doesn't know. Right?
Sure, I mean, at first glance, he did say he didn't know, but I mean, otherwise, I don't think the property or his name is even referenced on this document, is it?
Well,
We can give him a minute to look at it.
To the best of my knowledge, I've never seen this document before, but it looks like it's pertaining to the detached two-car garage.
Okay, do you see that there's a little notation that says open Z12037 shed?
Yes,
But you don't know,
Yes.
do you know what that is?
I do know.
Okay. The last exhibit is JB 29, which is right before the one. I have a specific question about this relating to parking. Can you identify what this is? It's an 8.5 by 14, so it might have gotten stuck in clips or something.
Exhibit JB 29, yes. What was your question? I'm sorry.
What is that document, if you know?
That is an approved site plan for the permit that we currently hold for the addition that we're doing on our property, 1422 Ardley Circle.
Okay, my specific question relates to, on the left-hand side of the existing asphalt driveway, it says new paved parking area. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
700 square feet. What is that parking for?
That is for my mother and father who will be living on the property with us so that they have a less distance, a shorter distance to actually get from their car to their residence.
Okay, so that's not anything to do with your business, your CZ woodworking shop business.
No, that's specifically for the in-law suite that we're putting in for my mom and dad to live on the property with us.
Okay. Okay, I believe that's all that I have. Thank you so much for your patience.
Ms. Setzler, do you have questions on cross for the witness?
I do, but I'm happy to report that Ms. Boswell was pretty thorough, so I think my 50 pages are down to 3, so hopefully we'll move right along.
Thank you.
And can you hear me without me holding this?
Yes.
I prefer not to hold it.
Sure.
Mr. Zampano, can you turn to what I have marked as Exhibit A3 in your application, please? And that's the site map with the lines and the yardage on there. Sure, take time.
Hello? Okay. Do you mind repeating that? I'm sorry.
Certainly. You have your A3 in front of you?
Exhibit A3 is Will Thornton's,
I'm sorry, A3 of your application.
Oh, my application.
It's an aerial photograph of your home with distances marked on it.
I'm looking for it. I'm sorry. I'm
Take
not
your
sure
time.
what it is.
No, I know, we have a lot of marked exhibits and some are duplicated, so take your time, please. Of the application.
I do not have it in front of me. We're looking for it.
I have extra copies if that helps.
Yeah, A3 that I see here is, I believe David Stewart.
That's applicant's exhibit A3, but the application is A1, and in it it's marked A3. Unfortunately, they're duplicated. So if you go to the packet of applicant's exhibits, it's attached to the application. It's also a board exhibit. Would anyone like just an extra copy of it?
Bingo, for members.
It's the
Yes.
same as A10 in our exhibit packet.
Yes, that's what I have in front of me, 810. Okay,
Everybody has it?
okay.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I don't have any questions about this now that you found it, though.
Good one.
I just wanted to make sure you could find it. Mr. Zapata, what's the significance of the yardage on here? Let me back up. Did you prepare this exhibit?
I did.
Okay, and what's the significance of the lines in the yardage?
When we were mapping out this location for the proposed site location of the detached two-car garage and of my business, I took it upon myself to prepare this documentation from a Google Earth image and screenshot, and then basically use Google Earth to figure out the approximate measurements from the proposed location to all of the surrounding properties that I thought would be the properties that would be closest to the shop and to the actual homes.
Okay, but you agree with me that the lines and arrows go to the residences, is that correct?
They did, yes.
Not to the actual property lines?
Yes, that was before I was made aware that the ordinance and the decibel readings and everything we've been discussing was more relative to the property lines, because I was more concerned about the residences myself, not the property lines, because they're such big properties, 1.2 acres, 1.3 acres, 1.5 acres, 1.7 acres.
Right, but you agree with me that these properties have decks, outdoor areas that would be affected by your operation as well, is that your understanding? It's not just their home.
I'm not aware. I don't know.
You don't know whether people use their outdoor backyards?
I don't know what the setup is of each individual person's home as far as some of them. One of the homes, the 75 yards is not really being visible from my property, so I'm not sure what their setup is. Of course, people use their outdoor spaces. But
Okay, but you acknowledged that the ordinance requires the distance to the property line, not to the house.
for the decibel readings, correct? Yes.
Okay.
That's not what this was presenting.
And you testified at the last hearing that you did want to consider the location of this new detached garage vis-a-vis its location with respect to your home and the other homes. Was
Sure.
that your testimony?
Sure.
And what did you do with that consideration? What was your process besides this document?
As far as the approximation to my home is actually the closest property to any of these surrounding properties. So we found it was more about the location of the shop as opposed and in correlation to the surrounding properties, not necessarily just my home.
Okay, and I'm asking you what process, well, let me back up a second. So you said it's closer to your property,
Yes, it
obviously.
is, of
it's
course.
on your property.
Yeah, of course.
But you agree with me, it's the farthest most point of your property that the shed or the garage can be situated. It's on the back rear setback.
It's not actually on the setback lines. It's actually inset from those lines. So it's not the furthest point.
But it's a distance from your home.
Yes.
And you're aware that the actual property line by your exhibit that is the aerial with the legend on it that has a distance, that, for example, the Corvino property is only 28 feet from your property line.
I'm not sure the distance. But,
Okay. I'm still a little unclear, Mr. Zampano, about the 500 square feet, whether the shelving that you're talking about is included in that, and is the boundary, or is that outside of the 500 square feet?
The shelving is outside of the 500 square feet. I tried to make it as clear as I could on the blueprint as far as the actual layout, as far as the square footage. So I gave approximations with arrows, with distances from point A to point B. And the total square footage comes in at approximately 500 square feet. So that the shelving is not included in the 500 square feet.
That was my question, and then the overhead storage you said was personal storage, not CZ woodworking related.
The overhead storage is in the loft.
Over the garage doors?
Over the one, well, the one garage door has a low ceiling, that would be above the shelving, the proposed shelving. The other side, so the left bay, if you're looking at the shop, the left bay is it's an open space. It's floor to ceiling. So as far as I know, the ordinance does not set a limitation on volume, just on square footage. So the volume on that side is actually is where the majority of wall space is used, and that's where I would use overhead storage in that area.
Okay, for personal or for CZ?
No, that'd be for the business. Yeah.
Okay, so your testimony is you don't think the height of the area is included in the volume of 500 square feet?
It's, I'm not sure what the question is, I'm sorry. The area is not volume. Yeah, area is different than volume. So area is square footage, volume is three-dimensional, right? As
Okay,
far as,
so I'm trying to reconcile your diagram with your testimony. The storage for CZ woodworking is included in the 500 square
correct,
feet?
yes.
Okay, that was not clear to me. It seemed like it was
Yeah.
outside of.
No, it'd be within the 500 square feet as far as the footprint. The volume goes up, and I can utilize the space up. You can use whatever wall
that's-
space is available,
that
yes,
was what I was
within that 500 square feet.
Okay, got it. And I'm befuddled that we don't have a list of all of the equipment you'll be putting into the garage. Is there such a list that you've prepared?
I have not prepared the list because I really thought it was completely inconsequential. Most of the tools I use, especially some of the hand sanders and Festool equipment and some of the disc sanders, they're very quiet machines. They kind of purr and hum. They don't really create anything that would be even probably distinguishable one else outside the shop or even within 10, 15, 20 feet away from it. So those tools were originally measured with the decibel reader that I had at my old shop, and they were basically decibel readings that weren't even worth recording, to be honest with you. So that's why that was never utilized any of those readings moving forward.
Okay, and I appreciate that that's the distinction in the decibel reading lists, that what you tested with Mr. Gordon was not what was tested with your sound expert.
Yes.
But the noise reading isn't the only consideration in this application, and whether or not your equipment is something one would normally find in a residential area is probative. And I don't know what equipment you have in addition to what your expert listed and in addition to what Mr. Gordon listed. Is there such a list?
I do not have a list prepared.
Can you start telling me what other equipment you have that was not listed by the expert?
Yes, I have.
Well, I mean, I'm going to object to that. I think the question has been answered, that he has numerous, if not thousands of tools. And is the question asking him to go through and name every single tool that he owns?
No, I think we're talking about pieces of equipment, and his answer heretofore has been with respect to the noise level. It has not been with respect to whether or not that piece of equipment would be something you would normally find in a residential setting. I don't know.
Question.
And I asked him the one question: how do we know what equipment one would normally find in a residential setting? I'm not talking about screwdrivers and hammers. I'm talking about pieces of equipment. He alluded in his testimony that there is additional significant plug-in equipment that he has that he may place in the unit, and I don't know what it is, and I think we're entitled to know what it would be.
I'm in agreement with Ms. Setzler, and I think that the witness, to the extent that he can identify such power tools or, noise generating tools aside from the common handsaw and hammer, I'd ask you to attempt to answer that question.
Sure. I have numerous hand sanders that I use, or power sanders.
And can I just stop you, because there are an array of power sanders. What's the horsepower? What's the manufacturer? What's the brand?
I'd have to present a list for you. I can't come up with everyone just out of the top of my head. I have no idea what the model numbers are, and I have to prepare a list.
Would you be willing to prepare such a list?
Take it under consideration.
I really think it's.
All right, so
The question's been posed whether he'll compose such a list, and the applicant has advised that he'll take that request under consideration. The question on the table right now is for the applicant to attempt to answer Ms. Setzler's previous question about what tools he has that he can identify that haven't already been identified.
Sure. As I was stating, I have various sanding machines, mostly sanding machines, disc sanders, oscillating spindle sander. I have a drum sander. I have a trying to think of various sanding machines.
Are they all of a similar manufacturer, Mr. Zampano?
No, one is a oscillating spindle sander is a Grizzly. The disc sander is a Delta. The drum sander is a Jet. I think they're all the sanders I have.
Is the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Other than the, those are stationary sanders, then I have power hand sanders as well. Mostly Festool equipment. Festool, F-E-S-T-O-O-L.
The Grizzly, do you know what horsepower that oscillating sander is?
I would have to imagine it's probably a half horsepower at most, a third horsepower. They run on very low power. They don't require much draw, much amperage. They're really just basic sanding machines.
You testified that you removed the dust that's collected and shards of wood and scraps sometimes into trash bags.
Correct, sometimes, yeah.
And other times, if you have a dumpster available for a contracting job, you use the dumpster?
Yes. Which most of the time I generally have a dumpster available. So.
And the sander, I'm sorry, the dust collectors, how many of those do you have?
2 dust collectors.
And how efficient are they? Do you have dust that's not collected with those sanders that you periodically must clean out of your shop?
Yeah, I mean, there's generally sawdust, sure, that collects on the tabletops or countertops or the floor, of course. But they're very efficient machines.
Am I correct that the hierarchy of the skill level or the artisan level would be that a general contractor is a general working, whereas your woodworking is a higher, fine, high-level quality artisan?
Well,
Comparatively?
no, I think being a general contractor and efficient and very good one is a very challenging task. If you're overseeing a large-scale projects, it's really you're kind of the quarterback. You've got a number of subs, and you've got blueprints, designers, homeowners. You have a lot of different moving parts. So I think that's a very challenging position in itself. Fine woodworking is just it's a whole kind of different aspect of craftsmanship. The general contractor is generally more managerial, so to speak, and then it depends what you're doing. If you're building a deck, then obviously you're just building a deck. But if I was overseeing a kitchen remodel, a lot of times it's just coordinating timeframes with different subs and working with the homeowner on redesigns and layouts and things of that nature. So it's more kind of management and customer service oriented. The woodworking is me sitting there with my wood and my tools and just kind of getting lost in the moment, so to speak. And it is certainly a different craft and trade altogether.
Okay, and that different craft and trade, I think you're being modest, because I know a lot of contractors, and I don't think they can do some of the things that you produce. You would agree with me that being a fine woodworker is a higher skill level of carpentry.
Sure, I think it's a reasonable assessment, yes.
And you use the word commission, that customers commission your work. What do you mean by that? I know what I hear, but I'm not sure that I understand what you mean by that.
Sure. If someone wants a custom piece and they say, hey, we want a really unique dining table for a brand new home, they commission me, so to speak, to build it just like you would a piece of art. I look at it as artwork. So they'll commission me to build a very specific, unique, one-of-a-kind piece. We agree on an amount for the project. They submit a deposit. It goes into my queue based on where I am at that point in my schedule, and then it gets fabricated. And once it's finished, it's delivered and presented to the client.
So can you explain to me, if I said I want one of your salad bowls, that would just be a sale, but if I wanted a custom table, that would be commissioned? I'm trying to grasp what you mean by the word commissioned.
Sure. Well, I don't really make salad bowls, so to speak.
No,
Those are,
that was an example.
yeah. I'm sure what was the question again? I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to discern what you mean by the word commissioned.
Every piece that I do that is custom fabricated in my shop is commission based. There's no more than one. You're never going to see a second one. So commission basically means if you commission someone to have a piece of artwork painted for you, you would basically expect a one-of-a-kind piece. So you're commissioning that artisan to use their skill set to create a one-of-a-kind piece of artwork for them.
Okay. And that would be confined to your woodworking products?
Yes, I wouldn't designate building a deck as being commissioned to build a deck. You're just hired to build a deck, so to speak.
You're just selling the deck and creating it and finishing it for a customer?
Yes.
Good question.
So I'm asking him, yes.
That was a statement.
No, I believe it was a question. He answered me. I think he understood it was a question. You agree with me?
Sure. Yeah.
Does your contracting business do the installations of, for example, the shutters that I saw on your website, or any cabinets that you make? Are you
What
the
shutters?
installer?
I'm sorry.
I think there was a Philadelphia, like an old city, there were shutters and a built.
Oh, I did. I did the Bilko doors and the shutters. It was a Society Hill Brownstone. Yes.
Were they the historic shutters?
Yes.
Okay, and did you strip them down and rebuild?
No, I made them.
That's what I'm asking you.
I fabricated them from scratch.
Okay, so they're not the historic shutters?
They're
Okay.
not. No, we did it as a replica.
Okay.
That and the Bilko doors themselves. Yeah, we're talking about the same project, which I'm sure we
I
are.
think we are. And then you would be the installer of the product. You don't hire a third party to install your.
No, not generally, because I like to see it through till the end. So usually I would try to install it myself, unless it was something where the client just wanted me to just make it for them, and then they were going to install it themselves, or had someone else that could do the installation. So, but generally I would see it through till the end.
And am I correct in my recollection that this detached garage does not have any air conditioning or heating?
No, there's no air conditioning, no heating, no plumbing. It's a one of a kind.
If you had an employee, which you would be permitted to have by the ordinance, where would the employee use a restroom, wash up? Where do you wash things up?
I haven't gotten that far in my planning yet, but for me personally, I would use my own restroom, obviously. Just use my own home.
And what would an employee use?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, excuse me, a lot of this is duplicated and I don't want to waste everyone's time here. Do your parents or in-laws reside with you currently?
I'm not sure how it's relevant to the.
Well, you testified who resides at the property now. So,
Yes, they do. But yes.
so when you were asked to reside with you, that includes 2 other people?
Yes, correct.
Why didn't you mention them when you were asked the first time?
Yeah, I'm just gonna reject it. The relevance of whether his parents live in his house is not probative towards whether or not he complies with the
with all due respect, he was asked who lives in the residence and he answered it, and now he's answering it differently. I'm asking if there's an explanation why he did not answer it completely the first time.
I didn't hear that he answered it differently. I think he answered the question in a different way, but I don't think with a different answer. I'm not sure what relevance it has.
Well, I think it goes to credibility and it's cross-examination. When he was asked, who resides with you? He said, my wife and my daughter. And I asked him tonight, do your parents live with you? And now he said yes, but he did not offer those people as living with him when he was asked the question on direct examination. And it goes to credibility. And I'd like to understand why he didn't answer it correctly the first time or completely.
Okay.
It's cross-examination.
Mr. Zampano, do you have an answer to Ms. Setzler's question?
Sure. I live in my residence with my wife and my daughter. We're building an in-law suite, basically where my parents will reside separately from us, and across from a breezeway in their own residence as an approved in-law suite, which has already been permitted from the township. If I didn't answer that correctly the first time, I apologize. But in my residence, which I deem as my home with my family, right now it's my wife and my daughter. My parents currently live in the quote-unquote guest house, which will be turned into an in-law suite and suite in their own private residence. It is one home, but I'm not sure what else you want.
It is one home. Is there one kitchen there? Currently.
Currently, there's one full kitchen.
When you had your operation in your Cherrydale garage for the 3 years, I think you said was about 2011.
Correct.
Were you still employed full-time at the, I think you called it your coat and tie job that your wife was?
I was not, no.
Okay, so you were full-time woodworking in your garage?
And I was working nights and weekends, bartending, waiting tables. I was working about 14 to 16 hours a day.
But you were working outside of the woodworking as well, as you were building that business?
Correct. Yeah.
You put in the, okay, Mr. Smith, your ears are gonna ring here. You put in your, application packet, the, permit approval for Mr. Smith's woodworking operation. Have you been in that home?
I have not been invited down.
Have you any idea what is comprised in that woodworking shop?
I do not.
Do you have any idea what relevance it may have to the operation you propose at your home?
It's the same home-based occupation for a woodworking shop, so I mean, imagine if there is a relevance.
Do you have any idea what equipment Mr. Smith has in his woodworking shop?
I would imagine the township might have a list of that.
Do you have a list of that?
I do not.
Do you have any idea whether that woodworking shop is in the house, in a garage, or anywhere on that site?
I would imagine it's in his permit application.
Do you know whether it is in his home or in any outbuilding?
I do not know.
Do you have any idea what equipment he has in his home?
Ask and answer. Objection.
Equipment?
You did ask that.
I'm sorry. Do you have any idea what surrounds Mr. Smith's home?
Surrounds as in what? I'm sorry.
Have you been to the property?
I've driven by the property. It's on the main road.
Thank you. I think that wraps me up.
Thank you, Ms. Setzler.
Thank you.
Mr. Millier, you have party status, so you now have the right to cross-examine the witness, Mr. Zampano. I would ask if you have questions, you approach, and we'll get you a microphone.
Thank you.
I just ask that you direct your questions to Mr. Zampano based on his testimony and not go outside of those bounds.
You can pick the microphone up. Yeah, we'll pick it up there.
Testing.
Hey.
Do you know if, Mr. Do you know if any of the product stains, polishes, varnishes, or the Rubio products, the Monaco, is flammable?
To my best of my knowledge, no.
In your years of experience, or are you aware if rags of certain products, finishing products that I just mentioned, that they can spontaneously combust?
I'm aware it's a warning from certain manufacturers. That's why you let the rags dry out overnight, and that's the proper way to dispose of them.
Do you know if sawdust is flammable?
So what product? I'm sure it is, yes.
I'm gonna change the subject. I have 3 more questions.
Sure.
You're gonna have to keep speaking up, you're starting to get soft.
Okay, I'll speak louder. Good at that. What did you file the permit for when the building structure, I'm sorry, can I repeat that? What did you file the permit for the structure of the workshop?
As a 2-car garage.
Was it always your intent to run your commercial workshop out of this structure?
It was always an intent to use that as a wood shop, yes.
Why did you start building for commercial means under an incorrect permit?
Incorrect.
Well, I'm going to object. I'm objecting to the reference as to what a permit, an incorrect permit is. I don't know what that means.
Sure, could you clarify what you mean by incorrect permit?
If the permit was filed under a residential garage status, but the intent was always to be a commercial component or business, that was kind of the meaning behind it. So I'm just questioning why it was filed under a residential element and not a commercial element.
Well, I guess I'm going to reject the testimony Mr. Zappano has with that. He intended to utilize this as his personal workshop until he obtained a permit to utilize it for home occupation. I don't think that's an improper motive for filing an application for a 2-car garage.
Objection, I don't recall that testimony in this record. That's the first I've ever heard that summary.
And those were the statements of the planning commission.
They're not in this record.
Testimony. Okay.
All right, well, yeah, I don't know that there were statements made of record here for these conditional use proceedings. So, Mr. Zampano, to the extent you understand and can answer the question, could you please provide that clarification for Mr. Millier?
Sure. Regardless of what the intent of use, we were always going to build a detached 2-car garage on our property. Whether or not I received the permanent approval for the home-based occupation, or whether it's just going to be used personally. Either way, it's going to be my own personal space that could be used for a wood shop or for a business. So here we are applying for that application for home-based occupation in order to use that structure for my business. If that does not go through, if it did not, I would certainly still use it as a home-based or a home personal wood shop. So all of my intent was to always use it as a wood shop as well as a personal space for the loft and for the storage. That structure was always going to be built regardless of the approval of the home-based occupation or not. So we always had the intention of putting that up on the property. We met with the township prior to moving onto the property. We was always presented, we were always forthright with our intentions.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, mindful of the time being approximately 20 after 9, we'll now turn to the Board of Supervisors and see if any board member has any questions of this witness as it pertains to his direct testimony.
I have a question. Mr. Zampano, let's just use the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. On average, over a year's period of time, let's say, what percent of your time is spent on site at your shop versus off site at a project or even for personal, from a 7 to 7 years, a 12-hour span? What percent of your time would be in the shop?
Sure. At a 12-hour span, over the course of a year spent in the shop. I mean, my approximations were about 60% of my time is probably spent on site, as versus 40% of my the work, hours, not this, the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., the actual amount of time I work. If we're factoring that in, I would have to say probably the amount of time would have to be probably 25%, 30% of the total amount of time of my work for the entire year out of those hours. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm sorry, 25% would be less.
Just trying to quantify as far as if the 7 to 7 time frame is 12 hours a day, I would actually probably utilize only about 8 hours of that day of work. So that's 75% right there. If we had to match that down to 60% of my time on site versus 40% off site, that diminishes it further. I'm not.
Okay, yeah, my second question was, when you're on site, what percentage of the time would you normally be running the machinery, the machinery that was tested?
Sure. I would imagine the amount of time that actually spent is running machinery is probably less than 10% of my time in the shop. Most of it is preparation, it's planning, it's setup, it's assembly, it's hand planning, it's all the hand cut joinery, it's things that consume the majority of time. The majority of time is not actually running the machines. The vast majority of time is everything other than the machines. The machines kind of assist you from getting from point A to point B, but aren't the end all be all of what I do.
So just to be clear, that it's the 10% of the 40% of the, or 60% of the time
Yes,
you're in the shop.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me follow up Dave's question, just so I understand. Microphone, right. Speaking of the microphone,
Bring it down to you.
step up to the mic, Mr.
Shane Jr.
Let me follow up David's question by asking if that percentage is correct. I would assume that the equipment is run somewhere during the day. So most likely, from what you know, experience,
Yes.
what hours of the day is the equipment most likely to be running?
I think that's dependent on where I am in a project, because if I'm at the early stages of a project, the amount of usage and how I'm using it might be different than the end stage of a project. So it's all kind of relative to what I'm actually doing at that time. I never do the same thing. Every day is different for me as far as what I'm doing when I get in the shop. Sometimes I might get in the shop and I'm wrapping a project that's done and it's finished, and it takes me a day and a half to just wrap it correctly in order to get it, ready for delivery. So there may be nothing being done in the course of those couple of days. Other times, it's tough to say. It really is. It's very relative to that specific project. There's no specific time frames, times.
The other question I have is I just want to make sure I clarify with you what I believe you have said. And that is your business model is that all the work that you do is based on a commission that someone has worked out with you to do a specific project, so to speak. And you don't do anything for the good of the order, let's call it. You don't take time to make a piece of lumber into something so that you would have it. Everything is done between you and a client.
That is correct.
Any other way of doing it.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, I just want to be clear, there's been some reference to the manufacturing element of what you do. A manufacturing element, to me, would seem to be where you continually produce a certain product to have enough product in stock that you could sell it to either yourself or through an agent or some other way of doing
Sure.
it. That is not the way you operate, correct?
No, that's absolutely not my business model at all.
I just want to be sure that the allusion to this manufacturing thing per se is a little bit different than what true manufacturing is. Yes, you make something, but it's but it's based on what somebody specifically wants you to make,
Agreed.
in a manner in which they want it made.
That is absolutely
Okay?
correct.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. All right.
Thank you.
Rotate my fingers. I apologize for not being at the last meeting, beyond my control. I have two questions. You have a planer that was not available due to either being damaged or
Yes.
I forget what. I'd be interested at some point to know the dB rating. I know some of them can get fairly noisy and I don't know what you have.
Sure.
So would you be willing to supply that information?
I will, and I did supply it the first time around, but it wasn't necessarily accepted by either the neighbors or the planning commission. So then we had Mark Gordon come out and then run some additional equipment. At that point, I no longer had the planer in my possession, so I was unable to record it at that time. If you wanted to use the original decibel readings from my first submission to the planning commission, I'd be happy to utilize that. But again, if I do get a new planer and have a planer in the shop, I'd be happy to run the recordings again. But I think that would require that an acoustic expert, once again, comes out to take the recordings, because I don't believe I have the right equipment to present acceptable readings.
I need some clarification on it because in my limited opinion in finer carpentry, a planer could be a fairly important part of a fabrication installation. So if you could help me out on that somehow.
Sure, absolutely.
The second question I have is there was a reference made to dust disposal and or potential hazard, I believe, by one of the residents. Will you be having any filtration system that would potentially have any kind of an exterior fan or ventilation that will inhale or exhale, meaning interior or exterior?
Sure. It would not have any type of like blower that would like blow it out outside of the shop. Is that what you mean? As far as like venting it, ducting it out of the shop?
Anything that would have a mechanical motor that may penetrate. Again, some of them can be fairly noisy depending on the motor that you have
Sure.
attached to it. I would need to be sure that number one, there's not a moon fan on your shop that's taking air in and or out, and or the box of equipment that you may have mounted doesn't have a fan motor that may over exceed the dB ratings. I don't remember seeing that on any.
Sure. I had an air filtration system that was part of the testing. That is something that is suspended inside the shop. And it all does is circulate the air inside the shop. So it draws the air in, goes through a filtration system in that unit, and then sends it back out as clean air. Just kind of keeps recirculating.
It's internally sealed.
Internally sealed, correct.
I have another question, just one, I think that was the last one. Last week when your expert testified,
Yes.
he, if I remember correctly, which is somewhat doubtful, he indicated that he listed or stated that he had certain equipment that he tested, including all that equipment at one point in time, to see if it fit the noise limits. Now, tonight, there was a lot more discussion about equipment, whether you had it, didn't have it, whatever. It was a little difficult to pick up because after a while, the questions kind of ran together. And I was wondering if we were ever going to get done with questions. But the point is, whatever you learned about the questions that were asked this evening by the lawyers representing their clients, you have any reason to change the nature of the test that your consultant, your expert decided to do? In other words, is this equipment that was done last week, that we heard about last week, is that representative even after all the discussion about the equipment tonight?
Absolutely. I believe I put my best foot forward. I put the equipment out there that creates potentially the highest readings. I don't think anything else would require any additional testing. I really don't. I think that we've presented the information and the proper testing to really represent the noise that would be created by my business. So
I guess the summary question is, in your mind, the max data that was presented last week, do you believe that that's a fair representation of what the max operation would be that you would use in your operation?
I absolutely do, and I wouldn't have spent as much money as I spent on Mr. Thornton to come out from Pittsburgh to perform these acoustics tests if I didn't, to present, with all due respect, the accurate readings and the max level readings.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Supervisor Lynch.
Just one question, Mr. Sapana. You indicated that your website is out of date.
Correct.
As the applicant, do you plan to update the website to reflect these current business services that you're seeking approval for, such that if the board ultimately grants an approval for this, that on the website you will be representing what your services are consistent with whatever decision would be made by the board, if your application is granted?
Absolutely. After this hearing this evening, I think it brought a lot of things to light that I haven't even viewed on my website, honestly, in probably years. It was created a long time ago and has not been consistently updated. So yes, I absolutely would.
All right, I'd like to allow now, as we have previously, questions of the public. People who are not, right, mindful of the time, understood. I would just like to, if anyone from the public that isn't represented has a question for the witness that hasn't already been asked, could you please identify yourself? Okay,
Lauren Millier.
you please come up to the podium. Ms. Millier, do you also live at 1414 Bramble Lane?
I do.
Please proceed.
My question is, if you had always planned for this to be a personal garage, and now the thought is to use it as commercial, do you have other plans for where you will commercially work if this is denied? That this will not become a hardship for you?
I'm not sure how to answer that. Do I have other plans as far as where to operate? No.
Does anyone else from the public, any members of the public have questions of this witness? Okay. Mr. Thompson, I imagine you might have redirect?
I don't know if you guys have a hard stop at 9:30. I might be able to just get done in 5 minutes, but.
5 minutes? Mark, 5 minutes?
Yeah, I don't want to rush you.
I'm 20 of them, we don't want to rush either, so we can also have another hearing.
Michael gets nasty.
Mark, as you know, nothing good happens after 9:30.
Well, that's the question.
That's the point. I've seen it too many times, and I'm at that point where I'm not very good anymore.
Just, I fear that redirect will lead to recross and it'll start a whole vicious cycle, so.
Another hearing.
We need another hearing anyway, we've got other witnesses.
There you go.
I didn't
Get to the spot.
I said we need another hearing anyway because my clients have not testified and we have other witnesses, so,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
yeah, no, I didn't speak to the microphone.
Okay, with all that said, we're just simply not going to finish tonight within the target time. So let's call a recess. Let's go off the record to establish a subsequent hearing date.
All right.
It is going to be.
I guess first and foremost, Ms. Boswell, Ms. Setzler, are you able at this juncture, now that we're 2 hearings in, to provide an estimated number of witnesses? Where are we going? What do you anticipate? We're not on the record, so.
Oh,
But we are still, you still need that.
But we still need to be heard, right?
We're still being videotaped on YouTube.
I have 2 witnesses,
Okay. An expert and your client?
my client and the experts.
Thank you. Ms. Setzler?
I have 2 experts, one would be a brief presentation, and I have 4 clients. I don't expect their testimony to be lengthy. It's mostly identify their property and their specific personal issues.
Okay, and you don't anticipate that will be unduly repetitious?
Not,
Maybe an hour. Hour and 15 minutes.
No, I don't think the 4 witnesses would take more than half an hour total.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that in mind, I mean, we clearly need to establish one additional hearing night. As we all know, the board's practice is to attempt to meet on Tuesdays. It's regularly advertised meeting dates. With everyone using their calendars. Mr. Thompson, do you have a proposed?
Next Tuesday.
Let's see.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Next
All right,
Tuesday.
okay. So there's an already advertised board of supervisors meeting beginning at 7 p.m. next Tuesday. The following Tuesday is the 27th of August. Do we have at least 3 board members?
Back to school night.
What day is that?
27th.
I thought 27th, we have the 24/7 request. Is that a different day?
September.
Oh, that's September.
Okay,
Marty got me screwed up on
do we have 3 supervisors available on August 27th?
Raise your hand if you are.
Hold on, wait a minute.
Mr. Jennings, I am not available. I have a meeting with the county commissioners and the airport scheduled for that entire late afternoon into early evening.
This is pretty quick to cover.
So does that mean it's Tuesday?
Nice. You can't be here, so.
No, it's an advertised meeting. I have a hearing that night as well.
September 3rd.
September 3rd. That's a second, let's go back to second Tuesday.
September 10th.
I'm away.
I'm away.
I'm here.
Janice, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, you 3 do.
Susan.
We're back. We're back to make a link out of this. Can we do it on Thursday?
It's my only hearing in September so far.
Okay, so we can do it. We all got different meetings together.
We really need to do it.
Let's make an effort to meet sooner rather than later.
17th, I'm in the shore and I am not allowed.
Okay.
We don't have to meet on Tuesday. We can meet on
Hey, listen, I'm not stuck with Tuesdays and, you know, this is,
Let David speak.
let's not try to just stick with Tuesdays. We gotta find a date that's reasonable. This is right
get
on
this
long
done.
enough, so let's get it done.
Agreed.
Thank you.
August 28th.
August 28th,
That's good for me.
29th.
29th is,
I'm good to go to the 28th then.
I'll make any date.
How about
I'll
Thursday,
make
August,
any date.
Thursday, August 29th? Do we have at least 3 supervisors?
I think I'm ready. For sure. Yeah, I just need to look.
August 15th, we couldn't do back on the 5th, like the August 1st, August 8th, August 15th.
August 29th works for me. That's Thursday.
15th is 2 days away.
August
Oh,
29th.
okay, August 29th.
I have a medical procedure scheduled that day and I will not be ambulatory. I'm sorry about that. It's an outpatient procedure. I will not be able to drive.
Is someone from your office able to cover that hearing?
With my experts, I don't think so, no. I've prepared the experts. I'm available the 28th, the day before.
The first Thursday in September.
The 5th, September 5th.
Nope.
I'm away.
The 3 of you, are the 3 of you here on September 5th?
I'm,
We can't.
Not necessarily.
We don't know that, but everybody's gonna read the transcript.
I
they
just
don't have
don't-
to vote. We're not voting then.
We got. I can't think right now, especially. It's really acting up.
Okay,
All right, September 5th is, from what I understand, the latest date being discussed. Does anyone have a conflict for September 5th? Thursday, September 5th. Mr. Thompson?
is there, what about the,
Just carport, so they can meet back.
what about next week, the 22nd? The 21st and 22nd?
Wednesday or Thursday?
That's fine. All right, even better. 21st and 22nd.
I'm out of town.
I'm available first. I'm available on the 21st.
It's Wednesday, the 21st of August.
Sounds good to everyone. Ms. Boswell, Ms. Setzler, can you make the 21st of August work?
My witnesses cannot, one of my witnesses cannot. My expert witness. We're good for September 5th.
That's what I'm trying to.
The one for the 24/7.
Saturday, Sunday.
Do I have 3 supervisors for the 5th of September?
There it is.
They come the next time. You better be good. That's all I have to say. 'Cause I am getting pissed off. And I don't think this is fair.
That is undue conversation for this public.
I don't think.
Okay,
I think you should be on the record.
September 5th.
We're scheduling.
No, we're not on the
we need not
record.
be on the
We're
record.
trying to schedule a date here. We don't need to be on the record.
We're being frustrated because it's late. Let's.
That's why I said nothing good have to happen. I said that. Did you hear me say that? And we all smile. We all agree, right?
Thursday, September
Well, I'm
5th.
sorry to get into it now. What is it?
Thursday, September 5th.
And how about it? We'll be in Scotland. I'll be on the island.
Is there any reason to ask it to start early or would I get shot?
Do we go through every day in August, the 19th?
Every day in August is no good.
I don't think we did go for every day.
Monday, August 19th.
Hold on.
August
Monday, 19th.
Monday.
19th.
Let's hear from council and see where they are first.
It's coming
before we
Monday.
commit.
The 19th.
My expert witness is on.
There we go. I knew that.
We're available on September 5th.
Wednesday, the
I understand you're
21st.
available on September
Yeah,
5th.
we
Ms.
heard that.
Boswell, we're trying to accommodate the applicant to not stretch this out over multiple months. Let's not focus on the 5th, let's focus on dates sooner than the 5th.
So far, the 19th.
Wednesday, the 21st.
Who can't do the 19th?
One of their experts.
Monday, the 26th,
How about Thursday the 15th?
Wednesday.
We can't, we have time.
Monday,
Yeah,
my
that
expert just got the France.
Thursday, the 15th. This
Thursday,
Thursday.
the 15th.
I am unavailable.
This Thursday. This
She's
coming
not
Thursday.
I'm available. Let's
We
go.
got a court
No.
reporter too, we need to schedule.
I can't, my expert needs to review the transcripts. There's just not enough time.
All right, so we're back to the 22nd, Thursday, the 22nd. Can you? get
Wait,
trans-
what, we don't, the expert needs to review the cross-examination of Mr. Zapata, and he has the expert testimony that we provided from the previous hearing.
He's not one is an acoustic expert, one is not an acoustic expert.
I know, but I don't
My
understand why.
cross-examination is intended for my expert to prepare.
Thursday, the 22nd.
Thursday, the 22nd.
What, 2 weeks to turn it around? 2 weeks to turn it around? So we're at, no earlier than the 27th to have that out for someone to review. And that's a couple of days to review it, right at the 5th. Yeah. I mean, it's a real world, people. I mean, we're not gonna get it easy.
Thursday, the 5th of September.
Thank you, Marty, Carmen. Janet, we appreciate
All right,
it.
let's go back on the record. It's not an Eagles game. Eagles don't play that Thursday, don't worry. Guys, come on. Are we available to start at 6 p.m. on the 5th in hopes of concluding that third hearing night?
I'm sorry, Mr. Jennings, I didn't.
Sure. Are we able to start at 6 p.m. on September 5th in hopes of concluding the the hearing that evening.
Yes, we're available and we're anxious to finish as well. I know there's a misunderstanding on that.
6 o'clock. Mark?
Alrighty. That's what it takes, sure.
All right. We're gonna go back on the record. Back on the record now.
We have an acoustical expert that might need to listen to their acoustical expert, so.
I can answer them right now.
Let's just make sure. We would like to finish this.
Let's hope he's not media like Mike.
Just give it, just let me go at 9.
September 5th.
You mind if I take most?
No, 50.
So I wonder if we can get a meeting before January.
I won't be here.
No.
He's just checking.
You gotta work the same hour. No, I'm not going there. Go home. No, you know what? I get punched by my wife for saying that. Go home.
My wife's probably falling asleep back there. I'm the father.
I can
get it.
I can tell by your home. Italian.
Hopefully you get an answer within the moment.
Just a hundred.
Call him and send him a text message. He was ready tonight.
We are not on record. She's holding her arms. She's afraid to touch that keyboard right now. The keyboard's red hot.
Okay, we're gonna go back on.
We don't know if he's available. We texted him and called him, but.
Okay. Back on the record. Mr. Thompson, can you just,
Sorry, just got confirmation. He is available.
very good, thank you. Mr. Thompson, as, on July 9th, no, I'm saying as he did on July 9th, are you willing to waive MPC timeframes to the extent they're applicable to this application to accommodate one subsequent hearing at this point in time?
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, we will waive the 60-day limitation in the MPC, given the fact that filed this in March, in order to have a hearing in September 5th. Yes.
Understood.
September 9th.
With that said, on the record, we are establishing that the third hearing, the third substantive hearing on this application will take place on Thursday, September 5th at 6 p.m. Yes, he does. There was
I
confirmation.
just got confirmation. Where have you been?
Mr. Jennings, we expecting we'll go to 9:30? I'm just trying to coordinate time and allocation of time.
I think the plan on the 5th will be to go until we finish, starting early, and we'll see where the night takes us, but I think the goal is to finish on the 5th. And Mr. Lynch is saying that because he's not here. All right, I just, if we could go one by one, I just want to confirm that council is available on Thursday, September 5th. Mr. Thompson?
Correct.
Ms. Boswell? Ms. Setzler? Thank you. That'll conclude this evening's proceedings. We're recessed until Thursday, September 5th at 6 p.m.
Have a good night, all. Thank you for your
Now,
patience.
hold on.
Don't leave, we gotta take
The hearing is over. If you wish to leave, that's fine, but our meeting is still in session. We have,
Not pertaining to this application.
not pertaining to this application.
You guys are out of here.
You can stick around.
I'm sorry, guys and ladies, I apologize.
As you know, we're working on the Taylor Pike Trail. PennDOT has signed off on the right-of-way plan for segment A. The next step is for the board to authorize the chairman to sign the right-of-way plan. And once that happens, we can start discussion with the property owners. So we need a motion to approve the chairman to sign the right-of-way plan for segment A.
I'd like to move that. Madam Chairman, I want to make that motion. Did you make the motion? All right, what's fine? I'll second.
David, support for a second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Let David do it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience.
Unfortunately, can she adjust us?
Hold on. Ryan. Unless I'm wrong, my thought is, if you are not represented by an attorney, she is an individual, not represented. Can she address this board directly?
No.
No, at the next meeting.
But,
Yes, and I was, yes. I was correct. As long as you're not represented, if you're represented by an attorney, you must go through that. So you are allowed.
So basically, you're acting as your own action.
Yes.
Asking questions of the witness, you just make a person.
You can do everything, you can yell at Marty, it would be very nice to me.
Wait, I can see like.
I know. But I was on, you were starting.
Sorry, I'm not coming to the meeting. I'm not coming to the meeting. It's not my part.
I mean, so we have